The sun was low over the wide Kansas plains, streaking the sky with amber and violet when the trouble started. Emily Harper, a young farm girl with a heart as strong as the land she worked, had just finished tending to the last of the livestock when a dusty pickup rumbled down the gravel road. Inside were 3 men, boys really, though grown enough to know better. They weren't strangers to Emily, everyone in the small town knew them. They were troublemakers, always sniffing around for weakness to exploit, the kind of bullies who got their thrill from tormenting those who worked hard and kept quiet. The leader, Clay Henson, spat sunflower seeds out the window as the truck skidded to a stop. "Hey, farm girl," he sneered, stepping out with a swagger. "Heard your husband ain't around tonight. Guess that makes you easy pickings." Emily squared her shoulders, refusing to flinch. She had endured their taunts before, but tonight, there was a harder edge to their tone, something darker. "Go home, Clay," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the churn of unease in her chest. But Clay only grinned, glancing back at his 2 buddies. "Nah, I think we'll have ourselves a little fun." They grabbed her before she could bolt, rough hands yanking her arms back. Emily kicked, twisted, shouted, but her voice was swallowed by the open fields. Within minutes, they had dragged her to the wooden fence that bordered the Harpers' land. Rope, stolen from the back of their truck, wound around her wrists and waist, pinning her against the fence like some cruel mockery of a scarecrow. Clay leaned in close, his breath sour with beer. "Maybe now your husband'll learn that folks like him don't belong here. Outsider soldier thinks he can just marry a farm girl and play hero." Emily's eyes flashed with fury. "If you think James is the kind of man you can mock, you don't know him at all." Clay laughed, but the laughter held a nervous edge. "We'll see about that." They left her tied there, bruised but unbroken, and roared off down the dirt road, their taillights vanishing into the dusk. Emily pulled and twisted, but the knots were too tight. All she could do was wait, her faith resting in the knowledge that her husband would return soon. And return he did. James Harper was no ordinary farmer. Before the war, before Emily, he had been dealt a force, trained to survive, to fight, to win no matter the odds. The military had honed him into something sharp and dangerous, a weapon disguised in a man's skin. But when he looked at Emily, all that hardness softened. She was his peace. When he crested the hill in his truck and saw her bound to the fence, every drop of peace inside him evaporated. The world narrowed to a pinpoint of rage. He stopped so abruptly the truck's tires screamed against gravel. "Emily!" he shouted, sprinting across the field. His knife flashed as he cut her free, pulling her into his arms. "I'm all right," she whispered, though tears streaked her dirt-stained cheeks. It was Clay and his friends. They thought it was funny. James's jaw clenched so tight it looked like it might shatter. "Funny," he repeated, but his voice was a low growl. That night, the bullies gathered at an old barn on the outskirts of town, drinking cheap beer and laughing about what they'd done. They didn't hear James's truck pull up. They didn't notice the barn door ease open with the silence of a predator. The first sign they weren't alone was the clatter of Clay's beer bottle hitting the dirt, knocked clean from his hand by a sudden, precise throw. The bottle shattered, and before the bullies could react, James was among them. He moved like a storm, silent until the crash of impact. Clay swung first, wild and clumsy. James sidestepped, caught his arm, and twisted until Clay howled, crashing to his knees. The second man lunged with a broken chair leg, but James's boot caught him in the gut, sending him sprawling. The third reached for a hunting knife on the table, but James had already drawn his own. The steel gleamed in the dim lantern light as he pressed it to the man's throat, his voice cold as the grave. "You think tying my wife to a fence is a game?" James hissed. "You think humiliating her makes you men?" The man whimpered, dropping the knife. James shoved him back, his fury barely restrained. Clay tried to crawl away, but James grabbed him by the collar, dragging him across the barn floor. He slammed him against a wooden post, eyes blazing. "You ever touch her again," James growled, "and first won't stop at breaking bones." The barn was filled with the sound of heavy breathing and the distant chirp of crickets outside. James stood tall, every inch the soldier he once was, staring down at the 3 bullies who now cowered like children caught in a nightmare. "You want to feel like tough men? Go fight someone who can fight back. But you come near my wife again, and I swear by God himself, you'll beg me for mercy long before I'm done." He left them there, battered and humiliated, with a clear reminder of who they had dared to cross. Back at the farmhouse, Emily sat waiting by the porch light, her eyes wide when James returned. He knelt in front of her, taking her hands gently in his. "It's done," he said softly. She searched his face, saw the fire still burning in his eyes, and touched his cheek. "I knew you'd protect me. But promise me something, James." "What's that?" "Don't lose yourself to the anger. They're not worth it." James exhaled slowly, pulling her into his arms. "You're right. They're not. But no one will ever hurt you again." Out in the night, the bullies nursed their wounds, haunted by the memory of the man who had descended on them like hellfire. And from that day forward, not one of them ever dared set foot near the Harper farm again. Because they learned, the hard way, that beneath the quiet of a farm's fields could lie the fury of a soldier, and the vengeance of a husband who loved too fiercely to forgive.